It was supposed to be lost forever, a scene buried deep in the Warner Brothers vaults never meant for anyone to see. But when archivists opened an old metal canister in the early 2000s, they found something that made Hollywood historians stop breathing for a moment: a missing piece of Casablanca. For 60 years, no one had seen Rick Blaine like this. Not the stoic romantic hero of the film's ending, but a colder, darker man, the kind who could put a price tag on freedom. The reel was damaged, silent, and fragile, but when it played, it revealed a version of Casablanca no one had ever known existed. This is the story of that forbidden scene, the moment Warner Brothers erased from history, and how its rediscovery decades later changed what we thought we knew about one of the most beloved films of all time. The scene that never made it to the screen. In 1942, just 48 hours before Casablanca premiered in New York, Warner Brothers made a drastic decision. Director Michael Curtis was told to cut a 2-minute sequence that had already cost over $8,000 to film, a huge sum at the time. The scene showed Rick Blaine visiting Victor Laszlo in jail. It was simple, quiet, and devastating. Rick, played by Humphrey Bogart, enters Laszlo's cell dressed in a dark suit, not his familiar white jacket. The room is small, and Laszlo, portrayed by Paul Henreid, looks beaten but dignified. Rick tells him, "I haven't much time. I've bribed a release for you." Then comes the offer that stunned test audiences. "I've decided to let you have the letters of transit for 100,000 francs. Laszlo, calm as ever, replies, "Very well." Rick answers coldly, "There are two kinds of people in this world, those who stick their necks out and those who profit by it. I've had my neck out a couple of times. I'm now in the profit-taking business." It was the only time in the film Rick seemed purely self-serving. No hints of the wounded romantic we remember at the airport. He was harsh, unfeeling, even cruel. And that was exactly why Warner Brothers cut it. When the studio tested the early version of the film, the audience reaction was immediate and uncomfortable. People didn't like Rick. They thought he was greedy and heartless. Hal B. Wallace, the producer, wrote in a memo, "This scene tips our hand." It made Rick's cynicism too real, too early. They wanted viewers to wonder about him until the very end, to question what he would do when love, war, and morality finally collided. Cutting the jail scene kept Rick mysterious, unpredictable, and ultimately more human. Without it, his sacrifice at the airport became shocking and redemptive. But for decades, that footage disappeared, believed destroyed, forgotten, or locked away somewhere no one could reach. Until the early 2000s, when Warner archivists unearthed it by accident while restoring Casablanca for its 60th anniversary DVD edition. What they found stunned even Stephen Bogart, Humphrey Bogart's son. "It's amazing that they still exist," he said, describing the fragments as part of Hollywood history. The reel was incomplete, the original audio lost to time, but using the film's 1942 shooting script, the dialogue was painstakingly recreated in subtitles. For the first time in 60 years, fans could finally witness that forbidden moment, the darker side of Rick Blaine that audiences were never supposed to see. The poisoned drink and the lost humor of Casablanca. The second deleted scene was even more unexpected. It didn't involve Humphrey Bogart or Ingrid Bergman at all, but it revealed the sly humor and rebellion that once ran beneath Casablanca's surface. In the recovered reel, Sasha the bartender, played by Leonid Kinski, Bogart's real-life drinking companion, serves a Nazi officer who has been boasting that he can handle any drink on Earth. The officer orders a cocktail, loud and arrogant, taunting the room with his uniform and his pride. Sasha nods, quietly mixes a concoction called the kamikaze cocktail, and slides it across the counter. The recipe was insane: overproof rum, absinthe, and, according to the script, gunpowder. The officer gulps it down, smirks for a second, then collapses face first onto the bar. Carl the waiter, played by S.Z. Sakal, looks at the motionless man and deadpans. I think the gentleman has found his waterline in a glass. Rick, watching from a distance, doesn't move. He simply returns to his drink, faintly smiling. It's a short moment, comic, but darkly symbolic. Rick's Café was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where Nazis, refugees, and thieves could all coexist under a fragile truce. Yet here was a glimpse of quiet resistance, a tiny act of rebellion served in a glass. But the studio never allowed audiences to see it. The censorship board, led by Joseph Breen, had already forced dozens of script changes to remove hints of sex, vice, and corruption. A scene where a bartender poisons a German officer would have been unthinkable. It mocked the military and implied murder inside an American establishment, both violations of the strict production code. Warner Brothers also feared the joke would offend countries that were still neutral in 1942. And there was a simpler reason, too. Casablanca was running long. The Sasha scene delayed the introduction of Ilse Lund, one of the film's most crucial emotional anchors. Cutting it tightened the pace, and the rhythm of the story won over everything else. When archivists rediscovered the footage decades later, even without sound, its rough energy was striking. Humphrey Bogart himself had reportedly wanted it to stay. He thought it added dimension to Rick's character, showing how he quietly approved of striking back, even if from the shadows. But Hollywood wasn't ready for that kind of subversion in 1942. The scene vanished, leaving only whispers of the film that might have been. The chaos of the script and the miracle of the final cut. When Casablanca went into production on May 25, 1942, no one on set had any idea what movie they were actually making. The script wasn't finished. Only the first few sections were complete. Every night, writers Julius and Philip Epstein worked through the darkness, hammering out new pages that would be rushed to the set the next morning. Howard Koch, another writer, was still rewriting entire scenes while filming was already underway. In the middle of this chaos stood Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, trying to play characters whose fates even the writers hadn't decided. Bogart, at 42, wasn't sure how to handle romance. He had built his career on tough guy roles, not on tenderness. "I don't know about this love stuff," he reportedly told producer Hal B. Wallace. He drank heavily that first week, trying to find his rhythm, and the shoot had to be paused for 2 days while he sobered up. Ingrid Bergman was just as lost, though for different reasons. No one told her whether her character, Ilse, would end up with Rick or Victor Laszlo. "Play it in between," the writers said, meaning she had to act as if she loved both men but couldn't decide which one. It left her emotionally drained. She later joked that she spent more time worrying about which coat to wear in the airport scene, a fur coat if she stayed with Rick, or a plain travel suit if she left with Laszlo, than about her dialogue. Director Michael Curtis didn't help much either. His heavy Hungarian accent often caused confusion. When he said poodle, he meant puddle. When he ordered, "Make love to her with your hat on," the crew looked stunned until he explained, "You know, like an American?" Yet somehow, through this confusion, a masterpiece emerged. Improvised lines became history. Bogart's "Here's looking at you, kid" wasn't in any script. He came up with it on the spot. And the iconic closing line, "Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship," didn't even exist until after the film wrapped. Wallace thought of it weeks later, paid Bogart $50,000 to come back and record it. Censorship, the Hays Code, and the battle for morality. In 1942, Casablanca faced not just war and deadlines, but the Hays Code, Hollywood's strict moral law. Every scene had to pass inspection, and to Joseph Breen, head of the Production Code Administration, the script was full of sins, sex, corruption, alcohol, and moral gray areas. On December 3, 1941, Breen sent Warner Brothers a 13-point memo demanding changes. Rick's Café could no longer be hinted as a brothel. His line, "What in hell are you doing here?" became simply, "What are you doing here?" Even the word broad had to go. The biggest cut, though, was about love. In the original script, Rick and Ilsa's Paris affair was intimate, even shown in bed together. Breen banned it completely. The writers rewrote it into memory and suggestion. The Germans wore gray. You wore blue. What was once passion became longing, and that silence made their chemistry eternal. Captain Renault's character also had to be tamed. Lines implying he traded exit visas for sexual favors were deleted, along with every trace of moral corruption. Even harmless words were softened. Damn to good luck, lousy bartender to very poor bartender, and Sam's "Ain't you going to bed, boss?" turned into "Ain't you going home?" The censors thought they were protecting decency, but their edits accidentally made Casablanca more poetic. A film where desire lived in glances, not in touch. The premiere, the war, and the unexpected legacy. By the fall of 1942, Casablanca was racing against time. The world was at war, and Warner Brothers wanted to release the movie while the city of Casablanca was still in the headlines. Just weeks earlier, on November 8, 1942, the Allies had launched Operation Torch, the invasion of French North Africa, including Casablanca itself. Suddenly, the name of the film wasn't just fiction. It was news. The studio rushed everything. Editing finished in November, and Casablanca premiered in New York on November 26, 1942, at the Hollywood Theater on 51st Street. Tickets cost $2.20, expensive at the time, and strangely, neither of the film's stars attended. Humphrey Bogart stayed in California, afraid to fly, while Ingrid Bergman was performing on Broadway in The Three Sisters. The early reviews were positive but not extraordinary. Critics liked the story, but few realized they were watching a masterpiece. It was only after President Franklin D. Roosevelt saw the film at the White House that things began to change. The screening happened in December 1942, right before Roosevelt met Winston Churchill in Casablanca itself for a historic war conference. The timing couldn't have been better. The studio released the movie nationwide on January 23, 1943, during the Casablanca conference, using real-world headlines to promote it. Suddenly, audiences saw it not just as a love story, but as a reflection of the times. A film about loyalty, sacrifice, and resistance against tyranny. Still, the success was modest at first. It earned around $3.7 million in its first run. Good, but not record-breaking. The top movie that year, For Whom the Bell Tolls, made 3 times as much. Yet something about Casablanca lingered. The more people saw it, the more they loved it. By 1944, the film shocked Hollywood by earning 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor for Bogart. On March 2, 1944, it won 3, Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. The man who had once doubted whether he could play a romantic lead now stood as one of cinema's greatest icons. The lost versions, the rediscovery, and what it means today. After the war, Casablanca continued to live, but not always in the form we know. When Warner Brothers prepared to re-release the movie in Germany in 1952, they made heavy cuts. About 20 minutes of footage disappeared. The new version ran only 82 minutes, stripped of its heart and politics. All references to Nazis were removed. Major Strasser, the film's villain, vanished entirely. His scenes, nearly 18 minutes of screen time, were cut and rewritten. Even the unforgettable La Marseillaise scene, where Laszlo leads the crowd to drown out the German anthem, was gone. It had been considered too sensitive for post-war German audiences. Rick's story was rewritten, too. In this version, he wasn't a man scarred by war and loss. He was just an American drifter, caught in a vague conflict against the authorities. Victor Laszlo was renamed Victor Larson, not a Czech resistance hero, but a Norwegian scientist running from Interpol. The Nazis became faceless officials. The word Germany was never spoken. Even Ilsa's past was altered. Her husband was no longer a freedom fighter, but a physicist in trouble for his experiments. The edits went so far that the meaning of Rick's lines changed completely. When he said, "I stick my neck out for nobody," it no longer referred to war or politics. It was reinterpreted as a comment on espionage. The context was gone. The courage was gone. And for German viewers in the 1950s, Casablanca became something almost unrecognizable, a love story without a cause. It wasn't until 1975 that German television finally aired the uncut version. For many, it was a revelation. Audiences who had grown up with the censored film were stunned to learn what had been hidden from them. The film's direct confrontation with fascism, its defiance, its moral fire. What had once been softened for comfort now returned as truth. Then, in 1988, the film faced a different kind of violation. Ted Turner decided to colorize Casablanca for broadcast on his TNT network. He claimed it would make the classic more appealing to younger viewers. 67 colorists spent over 4,000 hours repainting each frame, costing nearly $500,000. Rick's white jacket became powder blue. The smoky café looked bright and flat. And in one scene, Ilsa's dress even changed color between shots. The backlash was instant. Critics called it an act of cultural vandalism. Roger Ebert compared it to drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. Protesters gathered outside theaters with signs reading, "Keep your crayons off Casablanca." Humphrey Bogart's son, Stephen, wrote an open letter. "If you don't like old movies, don't buy them. But don't ruin them for everyone else." By 1990, the outrage forced Turner to pull the colorized version from shelves. The original black and white film, the one that spoke in shadows, smoke, and silence, survived. And then, in 2002, the story came full circle. While preparing the 60th anniversary DVD, Warner Brothers archivists uncovered 2 forgotten reels in a vault. Inside were the long-lost scenes: Rick's jailhouse visit to Laszlo, Sasha's poisoned drink, and several outtakes showing extended moments of familiar sequences. The Blue Parrot meeting, the Paris flashback, and Renault's line round up the usual suspects. The footage was silent. The audio long gone, but the emotion was unmistakable. Subtitles recreated the dialogue from the original script. When the lost scenes premiered at Lincoln Center in New York that August, Stephen Bogart, Isabella Rossellini, and Pia Lindstrom, Ingrid Bergman's daughters, sat together in the audience, watching their parents come alive again in ways no one had seen before. They said these scenes were better left unseen, that they would break the mystery. But after hearing everything, do you think Warner Brothers made the right choice cutting them? Let me know your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more hidden stories from Hollywood's past.